All right, match 5, and yeah. So this hand I think is a keep. It's not necessarily an easy keep, but the good news is once again Copter does have the potential to just really help smooth things out. And of course, eventually we do need to draw some type of creature. But the good news is that with Brazen Borrow, we've got 20 creatures that can be used to crew, and we've actually got 8 man lands. Unfortunately, only 4 of those, in the form of Mutavault, can be used this turn because Conclave comes into play tapped. But it's just a little unfortunate in a way that we don't seem to draw any, because we do have 24 live draws right there. Unfortunately, we do not draw any. And of course, at the in our opening hand, we had 28 possible ways to crew that we could have had. So this is where Smuggler's Copter can be a little clunky. It's just generally very unlikely for this to be an issue. But we do force a negation the Wilderness Reclamation, just because it does represent a lot of mana for them. We wait to play the Brazen Borrower at the end of their turn to play around counter magic, and thankfully we did do that. And I'm keeping. I'm actually not playing the Master of the Pearl Trident because I'm a bit worried about them slamming another Wilderness Reclamation. Just they can get really nutty there, because then they can possibly even. Let's see, they're on 5, 6 mana, so they can play Wilderness Reclamation. So they're not quite here yet, but they could. Sometimes they can even Nexus of Fate and get another turn. Bottom line is, I just really wanted to. I really wanted to have protection from some type of big spell they could play, most of which was Wilderness Reclamation. Unfortunately, though, the way it turns out, it would have been better if I would have played it last turn, because they did have Archmage's Charm, and in retrospect, maybe Wilderness Reclamation wasn't the worst. But we do have pretty good draws here, nonetheless. So I do attack with both. Obviously, they block with the Smuggler's Copter, but I feel like that's not that bad, because this also makes Brazen Borrower a very live card, whereas before it was getting brickwalled. And the good news is here we have the Dismember, so we can attack into this. And actually we attack in. Yeah, unfortunately they have the Cryptic Command. It's interesting, somehow they have so many cards. They didn't even factor Fiction, but I guess all the... Oh, yeah, they didn't factor Fiction, but yeah, and there's a Nexus of Fate, and that's just good game, because they're going to gain so much life, and, well, more importantly, they're going to attack again, and they're going to win. Alright, so that was a little disappointing. We'll see how the next one goes. Alright, game 2. And of course we would like to play first. And I think this hand does have to be kept, just because it has card advantage in the form of Silvergill Adept, which I have never really felt good about taking out. I just feel like Silvergill Adept is actually one of the cards that makes Merfolk potentially superior to other tribes. Because think about it, Spirits doesn't actually have Silvergill Adept. I know Nikachu, I remember, mentioned that Humans has a Militia Bugler, and not all versions play it. I think most recent ones don't. I think Silvergill Adept is just so much better than Militia Bugler though, because Silvergill Adept can help draw lands. That's actually something very important that I think is very underrated, and that's something a card like Bugler can't. But mainly it's that Bugler is 3 mana. There's such a world of difference in a 2 mana card that is also 2 power, mind you, so it's right on curve in terms of actually being a decent costed beater in and of itself. Yeah, I think Silvergill Adept just wipes the floor with Militia Bugler as far as power level. That might be kind of a hot take, but the reason why Humans doesn't play Militia Bugler is just, frankly, Militia Bugler is just a little lackluster. I mean, most of the time it'll find a human because the deck plays mostly humans, but every once in a while it'll reveal like a couple lands in Aether Vial too. I've seen that happen. Obviously there's some card selection along with it, but the fact that you can't select lands, it makes it so much worse. So bottom line is Silvergill Adept is just insane, and here obviously I overwhelm the opponent with Aether Vial. They can't really counter much of my spells. I curve out. I do sort of the Merfolk aggro thing. This is kind of where where we do play a little bit sort of like the dumb aggro deck. And maybe that's one reason why some players have that perception. Because, you know, when their most memorable losses are going to be probably where we just run them over with, you know, island walking lords. But that's, you know, like you cannot run deep in a tournament just with these kind of wins. You've got to win. You got to win with all these tricks up your sleeve. You know, it's the closer games where you have to actually play much more tight. That's what makes Merfolk a tricky deck to play. But anyway, not a lot to say about this one. Just we kept up counter magic, and then it turned out to work out well because engineered explosives would have ruined our day. That could have actually completely lost the game for us. Yeah, so thankfully we had plenty of counter magic. We had plenty of sources of damage, and see how the next one goes. All right, final game of the league. Let's see how this goes. But I feel good about this, and I did forget to go over sideboarding in the last game, but you know, I think that recording went pretty well. So you know, I'm just going to explain here what we sideboarded, and you know, pretty obviously Relic has to come in, and you know, Dismember's a pretty easy swap because it's much better to just prevent Uro from being able to enter the battlefield rather than trying to cobble something together to deal with it after it's already in play. Deprive, obviously superior to Spreading Seas. Spreading Seas, not necessary, really. Might help keep them off of Uro a little bit, but honestly, by that point, it's probably better to just counter Uro. Yeah, it's probably better to just counter Uro anyway. So, yeah, yeah, I mean, there was some consideration to Aether Gust, but, you know, I just feel like the rest of the deck is strong enough. You need to have beaters. You know, it's possible maybe Aether Gust should have came in instead of Brazen Borrower, but I do like Brazen Borrower. I mean, at the end of the day, I can't side out enough cards so where I don't have Brazen Borrower or Smoker's Copter, and the reality is they only have so many Coatls, and Brazen Borrower and Smoker's Copter can team up, and usually they can't. They don't have enough enough Coatls to make both of them bad, and you know they're good enough that I think that it's okay. So anyway, we'll see how this one goes. Yeah, so the first hand is obviously a mulligan. You know, like, the Force of Negation is helping declunkify the hand, but there's just way too big of a chance that this hand does nothing. Plus we can do better, and we do better indeed. And yeah, I do keep this, and I end up putting the Brazen Borrower to the bottom. You know, it's just the most likely to get blanked by a Coatl. And yeah, I do end up playing the Aether Vial first turn. Thankfully, we do draw another land that comes into play untapped, so we can play Smuggler's Copter on curve. Always nice. They do remand it, you know, which is kind of annoying, but it's honestly not that bad. We still get to keep our Copter, and we can Vial in Silvergill and not have to worry about, yeah. I thought it made more sense to get the Relic into play while they were tapped out, especially since they. Yeah, well, I guess they thought Scoured. They couldn't play Mystical Dispute, but yeah. Oh, my opponent also made a misplay last turn. This was heartbreaking, and it could have cost them the match because they really do need to deal with this Aether Vial, and also being able to deal with, I mean, the Relic, but also being able to deal with Aether Vial at the same time is actually pretty good. But they seem to have done the classic pay 1 mana, play Engineered Explosives, and forget to pay the 1 mana that you floated into the Engineered Explosives. And I think the best way to get around that, for anybody who plays these type of cards, which, you know, it actually comes up a lot with Chalice of the Void. It may have even happened to me once. I think only once, though, if it did. Yeah, it always sucks if you try to play Chalice of the Void, and then you play it on 0, but you tap 2 lands. The best way to avoid doing that is you just click on the Chalice first, and then you, yeah, and then you have an option, I think, for paying mana into it. It prompts you to do that, and it's just much less likely that you'll misclick if you do that. So, you know, unfortunately it happens, but the show must go on. You know, Coatl, unfortunately, is as annoying as ever. I do attack into it, knowing that they will block. I mean, I don't have Island Walk, so this does unlock my Silvergill being able to attack. Yeah, and also I was just way too mana flooded. So, you know, here I can hold up Deprive. This is very nice. I got to cycle one of my relics. I didn't really need that many. Yeah, I try to counter the Coatl just because it's kind of brutal in a way, and having 2 is a lot. Unfortunately, they had counter magic to back it up. It is what it is, but But yeah, I'm still okay. I mean, I'm putting on a decent clock. You know, I kind of wish I had that Smuggler's Copter back, but it is what it is. They're down a card because of that engineered explosive misplay. So there's that too. You know, we did thankfully have another relic though. So even in the alternate universe where they did clear my my relic and vial, I don't think we used the vial much either. We did get the Silver Gill into play. You can't underestimate though how much of a difference that makes. And of course here they do play it correctly. I elected not to counter. Just I'd much rather have access to both of these Force of Negations. Um, you know, because that, like, why potentially card disadvantage myself even more when I already know I'm probably gonna be down cards. And I think that's very critical because that Factor Fiction probably would have created a amount of card advantage that would have been very hard to overcome. See, and I think this goes on for a while, these cryptic commands bouncing my Mutavaults. You know, I don't fight over it just because, you know, realistically, I'm in a pretty good spot, I think, if they feel compelled to do that. They're not gaining card advantage. Um, so yeah, I think that actually comes up again this turn. You know, and you know, hey, I don't know that that's actually correct, but far be it from me to counter it. More coatls. No, this gets a little annoying just because they are a clean 2-for-1. If I don't have Island Walk, especially. Um, yeah, and they do blow up my stuff. Very worried about Uro at this point, but thankfully, I do nuke their graveyard and I get um, yeah, I get the Lord of Atlantis, and this is huge because I can defend this with the Force of Negation, and yeah, they don't have a way to deal with it. So, well, what can I say? Uh, yeah, they drew a lot of mana. My understanding is they do play a lot of mana. Hey, I got my 5-0. This feels pretty good. Um, yeah, so let's go into the post-league recap. I think I'm going to splice this together with the last video, like I did with the deck tech. All right. All right, post-league wrap up for the 5-0 Merfolk League. Yeah, this one went pretty well. You know, definitely good luck was on our side. But you know, I think that the deck probably has to be some amount better. You know, considering that the last ones were 3-2s. You know, I think we were pretty close to playing our best, and yeah, I really like Force of Negation. Like I've said before, it's just, you know, if I'm going to be playing Merfolk, which obviously I do like playing Merfolk, you know, I like to play cards that really reward me for doing so. That was my original logic with Chalice of the Void, but unfortunately, it just doesn't look like Chalice of the Void is at its best overall right now. It looks like it's at its best when in specific matchups where you know you need it or want it. So it's just kind of better as a sideboard card, I reasoned. Um, you know, when I know I need it, I can either mulligan to it or I can dramatically assess the value of my hand better in game two. You know, and I just thought, you know, what's a card out of the, you know, when I looked at my sideboard to think about making the swap? Because, you know, the reality is the rest of my sideboard I really like. I don't really, you know, I thought about maybe playing 3 Chalices, taking out the 3 Aethergus and putting something else in the main deck, but you know, I do like actually having access to the Aethergus. It's not the strongest card, but there's a reason why this is one of the most played sideboard cards right now. Just against the red and green matchups, of which there are quite a few, including Prowess, you know, it's just so flexible. It just helps out a lot. And you know, even though I still think we're disfavored, you know, I just like that this card helps a little more in those matchups. You know, and I don't think there really is a card that just single-handedly wins the Prowess matchup. Even Chalice doesn't do that, and that's the closest card of any card printed that I think can actually do that. But yeah, I mean, after Chalice, I think you're really just looking at cards that help out here and there. And Aethergus helps out in the Prowess matchup, but also against Titan. You know, also against some variants of Uro. Probably Temur Uro is where it's at its best, obviously, because 2 of the 3 colors are hit. But yeah, oh yeah, and how could I forget Gruul Midrange? You know, it can hit the entire deck. It's, yeah, you know, not necessarily the strongest card, but it, you know, deceptively helpful. And I really like having access to it on my sideboard. But I do play 3 instead of 4 because Chalice is game winning. Aethergust isn't. Aethergust is a helper card through and through. You know, it doesn't even actually permanently deal with the card if it's something they really like. So I just, you know, unfortunately until Wizards lets us actually play a 16 card sideboard, where of course I would play a 4th Aethergust, you know, because I do like it that much. Um, yeah, it's just the card that I feel that I'm punished the least for not having all 4. because unlike the other cards, including Deprived, which sometimes you just need for Titan or Escape Shift or other cards that no other card can deal with in our deck. Yeah, Aether Vial is just well, I guess technically Aether Gust can buy us a turn, but that's the point. Aether Gust is the card that I'm punished the least for only playing 3. I feel. But yeah, I mean, not sure what more to say. Fairy Conclave was always providing us good attacks. It was a game winner against that Ujin the Ineffable, that came out of the Mono Green Tron deck. You don't usually see that there, but that could easily have come up in Eldrazi Tron. It's such a deceptively powerful card. I've really been liking Fairy Conclave. I'm so excited to be playing this again. I just love having the option to be able to make these evasive attacks strategically. Mainly, I think, Planeswalkers really make manlands like this, particularly ones with evasion like this, just so much better than they look. Because Planeswalkers are fundamentally broken where you don't really have the ability to take them off the board easy. And, we don't have burn, so having these manlands that kind of have haste almost, I mean, in the sense that, they can sit on the battlefield and then they can attack when they need to. Yeah, I just find it so helpful, and we saw so many games where we would have been so much more flooded, or we really needed to be making these attacks, and Fairy Conclave helped out so much there. Smuggler's Copter, it's always still been such an all-star, even in like the last game where we kind of didn't have anything to crew it. It was actually slowly, I think, helping us get back into that game. So, yeah, not sure what more to say. This is I'm liking this version, and hopefully I can continue trophying with it even after the format shifts. And yeah, and also we're gonna have access to that artifact, that Merfolk that can steal artifacts. That actually might tempt me to play that instead of Aether Gust. Probably that's a sideboard card. I can't really see that replacing Force of Negation, Brazen Borrower, Merfolk Trickster, Smuggler's Copter. I really like this main deck a lot right now. But, it might be good enough that we can replace Aether Gust. It might even be good enough that we can replace the 4th Chalice with a 4th copy of it. We shall see. I'm definitely tempted to try that card out. Well, nice to be back in the winners bracket with Merfolk, and I think I had about 4 or 5 trophies. I think this is probably the 5th trophy that I won this season with Merfolk. Obviously I have 33 trophies, so 28 of those approximately were with the Prowess deck, various different versions of that Prowess deck. But having 5 of these being with Merfolk feels pretty good. I like representing Merfolk as well. I've just been able to jam so many more games with Prowess, and it was so fun tweaking that deck to where I got it. I don't think I can really tweak it that much more, but just, yeah, I put in so much work tweaking that, and it did take a lot of time to finally tweak it enough to where I felt like it was basically perfect. And I kind of feel similar about Merfolk. I'm not as confident that this is sort of like the final form of the Merfolk deck I want to play, but I feel like I've been able to reach a relatively close to the final form of a Merfolk deck I want to play surprisingly faster than that Prowess deck. I went through so many different cards, so many different versions, 2 different companions too, Jegantha and Obosh. Well, anyway, this wrap up isn't about the Prowess deck; it's about Merfolk, and well, Merfolk has been great. Merfolk Trickster, especially without Chalice of the Void in the main, definitely makes a lot of sense. Helps a lot with Tarmogoyf. Just being instant speed just helps. Yeah. So, let's see how this continues to go.